very glad to be here to speak about some part of my work and my experience with bonding psychotherapy. And I'm a bit scared of it, so I just say at the beginning, hopefully it doesn't create too difficulties to me. I introduce myself. I am a clinical psychologist. Later on, I will go back with my experience to specify some parts of my work. I am a fellow in the International Society and a family counselor before becoming a fellow of the bonding psychotherapy. And actually, I work with a company in Italian. It's called Dipendenze Tecnologiche. Technological Addiction is National Society Association on Technological Addiction. I worked for about 26 years in a TC. I coordinated 3 communities, and then I'll explain about that later on. So today I would like to share with you some of my therapeutic achievements in the work with bonding psychotherapy, work with attitudes, both in individual and group workouts. Okay, so last night I did my presentation to Daniele, who's very severe, very tough, and so I cut it off because it was too boring. So if I'm going to get boring, please, before sleeping, just tell me, okay? When you feel your eyes go down, okay. We can start from the ISBT clinical definition of bonding psychotherapy, just some highlights. It's a group therapeutic process, the treatment of disorders connected to psychosocial basic needs. The disorders change through experience activating body-related non-verbal methods as well as through verbal ones. So one of the biggest differences with other therapies is the activation of non-verbal methods, and we'll see it later on also. What are the goals of bonding psychotherapy? The first is the change the dysfunctional patterns. So we see people have created inside themselves some dysfunctional patterns, and we try these evolutions to satisfy the need for attachment as well as the other psychosocial basic needs, to improve attachment security, to increase joy and satisfaction in life. Which is the model of change. The basic needs are represented mainly in the implicit and not in the explicit memory. So we mainly work with the implicit memory, okay? Bring into awareness through the technique of experiential confrontation, and then later on incrementally changed through corrective emotional experiences. I'm just reading and then I'll speak more fluently out. So we'll try to see something about implicit memory, what may affect psychosocial basic needs, how to sustain the process to bring into awareness something that is unconscious, and something about attachment and emotional regulation, speaking about Alan Shore research. Then the second part is my experience. So this is some theory. I hope it's not too boring, and maybe we just share some ideas you already know. An introduction on the function is on mind versus relations. Okay? Psychobiological core of the early attachment relationship. So we have a core that is not only psychological, but it's biological. The role of the first year of life is fundamental, the non-verbal communication, the visual, facial, the auditory prosodic, and the touch gestural communications. So all the work that the mother and the ambient does for the kid to communicate, to regulate emotions, to regulate also the inner states, working with non-verbal communication. The mother-child tuning, that is the positive attachment, facilitates the interactive control of emotions with others, and then their self-regulation when the child is alone. So we can simply say that what is outside becomes inside. What is external becomes internal. The kid needs someone who works for him to control all the inner states. So He is hungry, he is scared, he wakes up at night. Someone from outside has to regulate his feelings. He has to tune with the needs of the kid and to do the proper answer to these needs. And this is all without words. The mother can speak with words, but the kid doesn't understand the words. He understands the sounds, the way the mother interacts with him. So we can speak about emotional regulation that has been studied especially by Alan Shore. The early social environment influences all subsequent adaptive functions. The importance of affection rather than of cognition in the development of personality and self. So we can study the brain in 3 levels. The 3rd level is the cognition level, the more evoluted in mankind and in nature. But the kid is not completely mature. So we can work with him with the reptilian part, that is the unconscious side of the body, the control of the body, of the heartbeat and digestion and word regulation, and all this part, and emotions, okay, which is the mammifero, how do you say?
Mammals.
Mammals brain, okay, the inner side of the brain. Emotional regulations explains the brain-mind-body connection in order to deal more effectively with the disturbances of the self and the regulation of the effects linked to insecure attachment. So we can have a clearer explanation of how we work inside, the connections between brain, mind and body, and the evolution of the secure attachment, which is one of the main phases of disturbances we work with, we have to deal with. The right hemisphere processes unconscious emotions, and is the seat of implicit procedural memory. So the part of the brain is the right brain, which works focusing with the right brain of the mother and the right part of the brain of the kid. And this is unconscious, so all the memories are stored in this part. In the treatment, the experience of attachment of the right hemisphere are communicated within the therapeutic alliance. So when we are in our room with the patient, we talk, we speak, but we also work implicitly with the right brain. All the movement of the face, the sound of the voice, the body movement, the eyes contact, all this activates the part of the right brain of the patient. Role of unconscious interactive regulation in establishing attachment relationship. This is fundamental. The transference and counter-transference between a relation with a therapist is fundamental for the satisfaction of the needs and the cure. You can stop me if I'm not clear, okay, and I mean same proper words. I'd like to introduce the levels of traumatization in the man-made trauma. There are man-made trauma and natural-made trauma. Let's say a earthquake, but we are not working on that, okay? We work on man-made trauma. Speak about Alan Shore works and this other teacher, Clara Mucci, who wrote the book Trauma and Forgiveness. We have 3 levels of traumatization made by men. The relational infant trauma. This is very important because it works about the bad tuning between mother and child. Mother doesn't read properly the signals expressed by the child. The result is an insecure attachment. Say a mother which is depressed. So her face is always flat. She doesn't have expression. She's sad. She can't read in the eyes and in the face of the kid his need. So she doesn't answer. She's not able to attune with the needs of the kid, okay? And that evolves in an insecure attachment. The second level is serious neglect, cruelty, abuse. In the first relational trauma, we don't have one event. You can't remember the event that causes trauma because it's a relation. endures years since the beginning. So it's unconscious, it's non-verbal, and you can't have a single event to remind. In the second level, you can have a single event. So it's a serious neglect, cruelty, abuse, maybe verbal abuse, psychological, physical, and sexual. It may develop in insecure or disorganized attachment. So we can have single events or a series of events of abuse, neglect, and cruelty. The third level is the trauma due to war, torture, and genocide, a massive social trauma called, for example, the Shoah. But it's not the usual case we have to work with. So I'm going to speak about these 3 points and then about my experience later on. Okay? The dysfunctional emotional patterns according to DT, which are the dysfunctional emotional patterns. My personal training and clinical experience, so I just give some highlights on that, and the description of achievements in my BP experience. Conrad Strauss, in his book, has written, early relationship styles and patterns are internalized during development of the infant up to early childhood. This means that relationship patterns are internalized. They influence development during childhood and are activated throughout life, whenever similar relationship situations occur. So we can see in the normal life people and even ourselves that are activated, like if there is a switch, we start reacting to some experiences because we have stored these relational patterns in our childhood and they are internalized. So when we have this stimulus, we have this reaction, okay? And our clients suffer of this. They give up, they give automatic reactions to some stimulus. Which are these dysfunctional emotional patterns according to bonding psychotherapy? Lack of emotional openness, fear of physical closeness, lack of interpersonal trust, fear of intimacy, fear of separation. How many people suffer for fear of intimacy and then give up relationship or never start a relationship, or fear of separation and then suffer inside a relation that they cannot bear anymore? Just to do some examples. So I'd like to share with you my experiences and to have a discussion about this. This is not a truth, it's just an experience. So I wanted to present this, and Daniele helped me in focus on this aspect, because when I started to do groups and to work on myself, I had already a lot of experience in therapeutic work in the community, work in the communities. But then I started to work inside the groups. After the groups, I didn't have a process to elaborate the work I did in the group. Okay, so let's say I had a lot of experience by myself, but I feel the need to structure a path of therapy. A process that helps people inside the group, outside the group, between 2 groups, and define a process of therapeutic work with the bonding psychotherapy. I don't know if this is the same experience in other countries, but this is the experience in Italy for me. In my therapeutic work, in the individual session when I work as a psychologist, and moreover in the bonding psychotherapy group, I have experienced the activation of a series of projections of the dysfunctional emotional patterns. So usually I feel this activation in the patient and also in myself as a counter-transference.
Can happen. Will be projected on you from the...
Yes, either on me, either in the other people of the group, when it's on the group, okay? Therefore, they can be processed through projecting the experiences in the clinical interview or in the group. So we activate these emotions. The emotion bring up the projections of the past experience. Then there is the feeling of the emotional expression. The persons are invited to express completely their emotion, and to maybe to scream in the group or to say it loud in the interview. Then there is a process that recreates a relation according to an emotional pattern, and this is interactive. So what is inside is put outside, and then again inside. And there is a change, an emotional experience that is hopefully an emotional partner that functions, that works. So this is my experience. I've been working for more than 25 years in PC. I started as an educator. I graduated as a professional educator 2 years ago. By this time, I also took a degree as in a prevention school called Joseph Bleger, which is Psychotherapy. Then I did a course as a counselor for transactional analysis, and then I did my work on bonding psychotherapy. So I also told you that when I decided to become a professionist of bonding psychotherapy, I didn't have many coordinates to do my work in the room with the person. I knew how to work in the group. I knew how to work with people because I have lots of experience, but then I had to put together these points. And so this is what comes out of that. This is an experience, it's not a truth, okay? I also read a lot about schema therapy, and I like to share this experience of reading this book of Hag Nasserbach. I don't know if you know him. Your Inner Child of the Past. I have a book here. Italian translation. Il bambino che sei stato. And this is very clear how to work with the internal part, the internal aspect of the person. He says a sentence like this: how to become a good parent, a good passé for oneself. This is the main goal of a treatment. This is what I think. Okay? So, in my experience, I try to use the bonding psychotherapy in a few contexts, and I created a path which strength is graduality. Graduality of intervention that is guaranteed by a differentiated set of interventions aimed at a bonding psychotherapy. So everything I do is inside the experience of bonding psychotherapy. In individual assessment, so starting from the assessment of the situation of the person, accompanying interviews, so having single interviews during the process, using expressive movement workshops, using psychoeducational accompaniment groups, so ongoing groups of 10 people working for 2 hours and a half every 2 weeks. So you can imagine the process with, and finally, the BP daily groups with partial use of techniques, expressive exercises, meditative and reflective techniques, self-centered group work, standing bonding, work on attitudes, work on the matrices. So a person can have one individual interview in a month or two psychoeducational accompaniment groups in a month, and then one daily BP group. This is a process that can last for a couple of years, or even less, or even more. It depends. Is that clear? I'm clear enough? Okay. So this is what I'd like really to share with you, how I translate my experience in creating some goals for the therapy. This is useful for me to have clear where I'm going and what goals for the patient I want to reach, I want to share with him and to reach. The first one is to develop a therapeutic relationship. This is a prerequisite. Developing an honest and loving dialogue promotes the experience of a healthy relationship that can be internalized. the therapeutic alliance is the therapeutic factor that is most correlated with a positive therapeutic outcome. So the research says, the common factor of therapeutic work says that the therapeutic alliance is the most important factor for change, for successful change. The patient needs to develop a bond of attachment that resists the trials and crises that occur due to the negative transfer of the patient. So during our therapeutic relation, since the beginning, we will have some trials and some crises. The strength of the attachment between the patient and the therapist is the energy, the bonding, is the energy that can lead to a successful relation. He recognizes the help of the therapist and both feel a sense of fruitful collaboration. This is made also with the work on negative attitudes through the right brain attunement. So we have to share our emotions, our feelings, and that passes even when we don't want. Even if we don't mean to pass our emotions, they pass through the right brain. How we look at the person, how we turn around with the body, how we move toward the person or backwards, everything passes our attunement to the situation. In this part of the goal, we collect and rework the request for help and define the needs for the starting of the therapy. Define the essential point of the therapeutic relationship, how we work together. Day, place, costs, absences, everything. Then we develop a psychodiagnostic hypothesis and a path of care. So we take time to decide, to see how the person works. We can use our tests or the interviews or whatever, and we define together with the patient the path of care. We will stay together in this mode for, let's say, 6 months, 1 year, just to define it. And then we can redefine it. It's not final definition, but we need to define the goals and the time. We recognize and question the reason for distrust and attack of the therapeutic relationship. So we can start to work with the person, with the distrust he feels, and he feels distrust. Even when he says he doesn't feel distrust, but he says he trusts us, then in one way or another the distrust will come out if he is working with us. If he's not working with us, we always trust us. But it's not real, because inside he has an internal distrust that has to come out. And so to work on the attack of the therapeutic relationship. Second goal, to develop an observant self, and in the other part, a non-judging observation of oneself. So what is important, that's called mentalization, to create inside of my brain, inside of myself, a part which is observant, converged inside of some traumas or traumatic relations. And then the work is to recognize the inner states, the parent, adult, child, and then potentially conflictual dialogue. So the person who suffers has an internal dialogue, and this dialogue is made of criticism, hate, violence, suffering, and this has to come out. The work is to make it outside, to make it on the relation with the therapist or in the relation with the group. So often I ask the person to write down words and phrases of each ego state. Let's say, what do you tell to yourself speaking as a father? What do you tell to yourself speaking as a mother? Oh yes, my mother told me this. Oh yes, my father, and my grandmother, and my grandfather. My grandmother told this to my brother. So I learn, I internalize phrases, sentences, and feelings that usually I don't speak about. They are inside of me. I speak to myself in these sentences, okay? So the goal is to create, develop an observant self. These are some hints on transactional analysis. The transactional analysis works in these three states: parent ego state, adult ego state, and child ego state. Okay, I just use this image to tell the person how he works inside and to show him how the other person works inside of himself. My mother, she has these three ego states, like me. So sometimes she's in her parental ego, some other times she is in the child mood. Okay, and she speaks to me as a mother from the child mood and not from the parent mood. Sometimes I meet a woman and I'm feeling a man and she is a woman, but maybe I'm talking by the child mood and she's speaking by the parent mood. So I want a mother in my woman, okay? And sometimes we go in conflict because when I start relation, I started like a man and a woman, but then I go to child mode and say, hey, you have to take care of me as a mother. Because I miss a mother, now you do my mother, okay? And then we start to have fights, to not understand each other, okay? This I explained to the person in the first interviews. So they have a sort of mental path to work with. Let's do some example of internal dialogue. This is another picture taken from transactional analysis. You see the three states of parent, adult, and child, but each state can be controlling or nurturing. You see, with negative controlling, too much control, too much fear, too much negative positions. Don't do this, don't do that, which doesn't allow to explore. If a secure attachment is closeness and security to do an exploration of the world, to go outside. If there is too much fear, I don't go to explore the world. Okay? If my mother can be meaning a nurturing position, but she's so afraid of leaving me, she still gives me everything as I was a child, then I cannot grow. Okay? So the negative position can be too much nurturing, too much controlling. Either there can be a positive position in both. The child can have freedom, so he's free of expressing himself, of moving in the world, of creating new experiences. Either he's too, a negative freedom is when he's too free. He doesn't have limits. So it takes everything. Everybody has to work for him. He is free to express his emotions and destroy things, and okay, too much freedom. Either is negatively adaptive. He's too refrained from moving. He's just stay there. He's adapted to the rules that families, mother, father give to him, and he doesn't learn anything new. Okay, in this internal work, there is the adult mood that have to grow up while the kid grows up and becomes an adult. The adult part, which works internally with a mediating work from parent to child and from inside to outside. So I am speaking with you, I'm using my adult mood, okay, because I know where I am. I know if it's too warm, too hot, and address in a proper way, okay? And I'm in the adult mood when I regulate my internal states. And they say, this is too much rule, stop it. I want to play, I want to meet people, okay? This is internal. So let's say we have parent mood with criticism, harassment, high expectation, victimization, violence, okay? This is inside and goes to the child mood with internal suffering, depression, negative attitudes, negative behaviors, reaction of the fight, flight, faint, and freeze. So all the reactions to traumatization. Okay? This is when the adult is absent or weak. If the internal adult is weak, he doesn't mediate. He doesn't give a stop to the negative attitudes coming from the parents. He doesn't give a stop to the negative attitudes coming from the kid. Okay? He doesn't make a protocol. Okay? These two absent and weak. So our goal is to let the adult part evolve, come up, become bigger in this image. Okay, it has to grow. So we are always speaking, I go back, about this point to develop an observant self, to recognize the positive and negative behaviors for oneself and others. It's very important to recognize the positive part, not only the negative part, because the positive part are the resources the person has, and he has to have some resources somewhere, okay? And we have to know them. In particular, note the actions of defense reaction, that reactions that come out in automatic reactions: attack, flight, freeze, and detachment. So this is when it's possible, when we are scared, when we are in a negative situation, a traumatic situation, we either fight or flight. I can manage to fight with Mimmo, okay? He attacks me, I can manage to fight. If I have to fight with all of you, I'd better fly, okay? I run away. This is the animal part. I don't even think about it. I can manage, or I have to run. But if I can neither fight, neither fly, I freeze. Imagine a woman who is abused. She has to stay there because the man is stronger. She's compelled to stay there with violence. So the body is there, but the mind goes away. She freezes, the body gets freezed, and either she faints, like animals do, we just detach, okay? We stay with experience, but our mind goes away. And this is the beginning of detachment, internal detachment, which is an important defense, internal defense. But when it's too frequent, when it happens too often, even in the normal life, then it's a very serious problem. There are defensive modes with which the injured part of the personality tries to get control on emotional states. So if I cannot control reality, I try to control the emotions. Imagine a kid who has to face his father who is violent. He cannot control his father. He has to control the emotions. And he learns, he internalizes this need of controlling emotion. I cannot react. Now here I cannot react. When I'm outside, I destroy everything. Okay? When the child was not able to control events and then to protect himself. Instead of controlling the ambient, she learned to take rigid control of oneself. So this is one of the important aims of therapy, to let the people recognize when he acts automatically in reaction, when he has learned to do these fight, fly, freeze, and faint reactions, and he moved the control from the ambient to himself. Okay? To perceive the hidden or covered emotions in the state of the wounded inner child, to feel them rather than to identify with them. Up to now, a person who didn't work on himself, he just identified himself with these emotions. I don't know I feel this emotion. I am this emotion. I am my anger. I need to be scared and run away, because this is my normal reaction. Now, working through the bonding, working through the attitudes, working in the interview, giving the proper name to internal states, then the person can learn to identify them and recognize the automatic reactions. Recognizing judgment about oneself and others. This is the work on attitudes at the level of individual and group sessions. If I learned that I cannot belong to anyone, I cannot belong to my mother, I cannot belong to my father, then I say, I don't belong to anyone. Okay, this is a negative attitude. My parent state says, you are bad, you are ugly, I don't love you. I learn, I don't want to belong to you. Okay, and so if I go in the world and I'd like to belong to someone, but I say it's too dangerous, so I don't want to belong to anyone. This is the work we do with attitudes. When the attitudes inside come outside, and we start working with them, recognizing with them, recognize them in the circle or even in the individual work. Third goal, to develop a responsible self. These are goals. it means that one of these goals may last 1 year, not one single group or interview. And all these goals are not achieved once forever. I have to go through them many times. So they work in sequence, but they also work in parallel. Okay, but they reach the aims together, to be responsible and to be to develop their several self. They can work in parallel, not only in substance. Okay? So to develop a responsible self, always in the adult path, to accept full responsibility for dysfunctional actions and attitude. I can't give to the others the responsibility of what I have done, even if I have been suffering all my life. Then what I do is my responsibility. This is an important change, because many people have suffered, feel victim, and victimize themselves. They justify themselves as victims, okay? Regardless of how they have been developed and assumed within themselves. I don't know if this happened in your life. I remember when it happened in my life. A certain time, I said to myself, it doesn't matter how I became this. My mother had this behavior, my father had this other behavior, they together that behavior. But now, this is me. It's like a tree. I figure like this, and I say this, I give this image to people. Imagine you are a tree. At the certain time, you cut the tree, and you see how many circles you have grown with. No? You were a small tree, so few circles. Now you're a big tree with many circles. This is you. This is you. It doesn't matter how you became this, but right now you are this one, this kind of tree. So you have the responsibility. Even if other people put the parts in you, okay? My father's responsibility, my mother's responsibility, whatever. But now you're this one. So this helps to accept the frailty, the impotence of the wounded and vulnerable child. One of the difficult parts is to accept that we have suffered these traumas. I don't want to accept it. I react inside myself. I refuse it. And so I cannot deal with it. I suffer with my wound, but I'm not able to contain them, to use them fully. So we have to release rigid control and relax the defenses. This is what we do in the groups. When people finally scream, cry, and shout, and finally say to themselves, this is what happened to me. This is really what happened to me. So they can release control. What was brought inside as a defense now is coming out. Is going again outside of the person. But this is not the end of the work. This is a part. So the awareness of the historical motivations that have produced certain behaviors the wounds suffer cannot remain or become the excuse for immobility, delegation, victimization. It is necessary to develop a healthy sense of responsibility for oneself and the actions necessary for one's own welfare. It's necessary to take a decision through the work on attitudes. So I can stay in contact with emotions, with my wounds, but then I have to stand up and change mood. I have to take a decision. This is my responsibility. This is our responsibility. When I work in the TC, which is the same TC which Gigetto coordinates in another part of Italy, we had therapeutic groups learned from bonding psychotherapy maybe 25, 30 years ago. And then people who did this experience don't know the links or where they come from, where the groups come from. So I went into this community and I started to do the same groups similar to bonding group on the mattresses, okay? But there was only the part on the mattress, not the part of the attitudes. So people would have this very strong expression of emotions, very strong contact, very powerful consciousness, okay? But then they wouldn't take a decision. It is important to stay laying down, and it's important to stand up. and take your own decision. This is your responsibility for your future. Otherwise, you always lay down. You are in your past.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
What you say now? Do you mean it's also literally that because the position of woman
Yes.
is laying down
Yes.
and
Yes.
that
We had these
that you do
groups.
something?
We had these groups called group postatico, static group, which is a group in which few people work together on the historic past, of history. Okay, and so they speak about the past, and then they go into emotions. So father, mother, anger, hate, abandon, everything. But then the group ends up in that position, just speaking. So it was very important when we started to work with Gigetto, with the educators, to introduce a part of responsibility. Because, okay, I can understand, but I cannot justify. This is important change. I understand you, I understand me. I've suffered for that, but I cannot justify myself all life because what I've suffered. Otherwise, I don't make a change. So I had to stand up and take a decision. But I had to do this maybe 30 times, not just once. The fourth goal is to develop a compassionable self, always in the habit card, to learn to take care of the inner child through the decision of attitudes. I take a decision in the group, I take a decision here in the therapeutic interview, the one-by-one session, but then I have to go out. I go out of the room, I go out of the group. I have to take a decision that starting from the change of attitudes, I have to take care of my inner child. Which are my needs, and then I have to practice my needs. Otherwise, I depend on the cure, and I stay always in the group, I stay always into the room, but I don't take a decision to go out. And this sometimes we like it very much. We enjoy to have people who love us and need us for all the life. Okay? But the life is outside the group. Limit and not justify the dysfunctional reaction of the injured child. So if my injured child has learned to react with hunger, with violence, with silence, I have to change my dysfunctional reactions. And I don't need anymore to justify myself. I know why, but I cannot justify them. To forgive the harmful choices for oneself and others. So probably we have done some harm to people and also to ourselves. We have to start the process of forgiveness, the internal new parental ego attitudes. So if the parental attitude is to nurture the child, we have to start to give, to be forgiveness, to forgive our child of the reactions we have. Sorry for that. So finally, we have to choose a new behaviors. Okay, to develop an integrated and integral sense of self. So all the work is to help the person to become integrated into all these parts, which are otherwise separated. Okay, and oneself in the world. So I have to feel integral with my presence in front of the world. The internal dialogue with emotions and attitudes. So finally, I can recognize my emotions inside. I can recognize the voices speaking inside of me and which reactions I have inside. And I feel one. I don't feel many, even if sometimes some parts speak louder. Learn to motivate oneself for healthier behaviors, to develop joy and pleasure in activities, works, interests, and in relationships. Learn to tolerate frustration and maintain behavior oriented to healthy goals, both personal and relational. Many patients want to be, to feel good and to be cured in 1 month. Okay? So yesterday I felt good, and now I feel bad. Why I feel bad? How many years have you feeling bad? How many years have you been in that negative mood? 20 years. Okay. So you have done one group and you want to feel better all the time. Okay. So I try to make them imagine the attitude like the rivers. The rivers, like the river in the Grand Canyon, makes a profound, deep
Shape.
Shape. Okay.
Gorge.
And then we have to change attitudes. So we have to stop the water going in that river, close, and move the water into another river. But the shape is very, very narrow. Okay. So if I go back in the old attitude, it's very easy. It may happen that I have argued. It may happen that I feel sick, I feel alone, and me, myself, I go back in the same attitude I had for 30, 40, 50 years. And so I get crazy to myself. This work doesn't work. What? I've been feeling good. Why don't feel always good? Well, I don't know if you always feel good. I don't feel always good. Even if I know my mood, even if I know my emotions. And I get mad to myself. Why? I don't feel good all the time. That's not a proper action. We have to learn to tolerate frustration and maintain behavior oriented to healthy goals. So my behavior has to go ahead for many times, many experiences, both personal and relational. Learn to manage emotions and direct them effectively. So I am learning to manage emotion, and maybe now the only proper action that I can do is to keep silence. Maybe I feel anger, maybe I feel hate, maybe something, I would react, and I cannot do anything else. Okay, just keep silence. That's enough. Tomorrow, you'll speak properly with your emotion. You have contained your emotions, you have passed through the brain, okay? And now, you can react. Otherwise, you are in the old mood. Okay? Finally, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe more, I don't know. We have the resolution of the therapeutic relationship. So we need to consolidate attitude choices and more functional behaviors. We need to do a process to process the emotion connected to the separation. This is a new traumatization. If you don't work on it, and the person has felt the fear of separation, then when we have to separate, we traumatize the person. Okay? And we can set up a follow-up. So we can say, let's see each other for 3 times or 4 times in a year. Every 2 months, every 3 months, we just see each other and speak how it's going. Okay? So what are the dimensions that are activated through work on attitudes? This is my opinion. Okay? The work done in the circle with attitudes and also in the room allows a profound elaboration and transformation at the level of identity, since the expression allows us to deal with various perspectives. Individual, me with myself. When we work in the group, we have a circle and my chair is empty. When I stand up, my chair is empty. So I can start working with the circle and say, there is a woman I work with. She never felt the first. Her brother was a drug addict, so all attentions, all problems were converged on the drug addict. So she was strong. She never asked anything for herself. She always worked. She paid for her brother, for her mother. Okay. In the group, she said, "I come first. I want to be the first." So she started to cry. When she was saying the sentence, the attitude to the people, she started to cry. But then when she was before her chair, the empty chair, she got crazy. You have to become first. You are the right to be first. So she changed mood from suffering to anger. She took a decision. She recognized her need. Okay? So this is her with herself, me with myself. Then me with you, relational. I can work with one single person. I can see in the eyes of a person my mother's eyes, my father's eyes. I can work with singular person. Okay? When I do the circle, I walk around, and I see that expression. I see that face. My right brain recognizes in that face something of my mother. And so I project my emotions. I take them out, okay? And I work with my mother in a circle. And I stay there. I can stay with a single person for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, because I have to work out all my emotions that are coming out that moment. Okay? And then there is other part of relational work, me with many, with everyone. I can work with the entire group. I remember a guy who was very, very abused, not sexually abused, but emotionally abused. So he was very scared of being in the group. And he wasn't able to go around, to stand in the center of the circle and walk, looking at people. So I put him in the circle around, everybody standing, hands by hands. So he was part of the circle. He wasn't feeling him and all the others. He was feeling part of the others. And I asked him to say, I trust you. Looking person by person, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you. And then he started to cry. I don't trust you. He felt the negative attitude. Okay. So when he felt the negative attitude, he would cry and scream, I don't trust anyone, I'm afraid of you all. And he working with himself, with me. Then he was able to stand in a circle and look one by one. I now trust you. And he hugged everyone. It was very powerful. Okay? So individual, relational, one by many, and one, the meaning, me with the world, with life, with God. I can open up. We did an exercise with Ramon in the International group in Belluno, and we went in the bush. Everyone took a huge tree, and we worked with the tree first. So we had everyone his own expression of emotion towards life, towards God maybe, if you believe in God, but maybe life, okay? What is bigger than it? And then everyone worked with all the group. So the same attitude worked with the people, okay? So this is, I believe, the parts in which we can deal with individual, relational, one by many, and the meaning, me with the word life for God. We can share thoughts and
thank you for presenting this background. Talking about the client child, you said it can be an internal dialogue, or that client becomes the client, the child, or the parent. And you talk with the little kid or with the parent. Also, what I like in between groups, also to have in the individual sessions different chairs. That you have a small chair, and actually it's also another chair. Little child, parent, maybe the mother or the parent, whatever, and have them talk with each other. Instead of you. And you also try that because they can be very clear now that they are part of someone, like you said, a helpless child that feels guilty of things that, especially if you are abused as a kid, a lot of kids very small thing, of course, I'm abused, then I must be bad, and I did something terrible.
We do that also in the group, in bonding group. We take 3 persons and we maybe create the family. Yeah. So the person with 2 other members of the group, and they act as if they were the parent of that person. So he can say everything, and we stay outside. So we are not into the dynamic. I do that also in the room, and I use maybe 2 chairs, and they say speak to the other part of yourself, as a parent or as a child, and they stay outside. I use a 3rd chair. And sometimes I call the person to stay beside me. After he has worked with the internal parts, I say, come close to me, okay? And see what happened. What happened? Tell me. And this is the higher part of the brain that sees and says what happened. Before you are inside and you project emotions, the transference, but then you see what happened and you can realize it. Okay? This is how. But I think this is important because I'm trying to figure out a process to teach new therapists also, because I have to learn this by myself mainly. So I think it will be very important if we could write down a manual of how to work in individual sessions, in group sessions, in psychoeducational sessions, in movement sessions, that is having a large experience and large sharing of knowledge. Because I think we have lots of knowledge, and we have a knowledge which is so rich but so difficult to share. So we have to learn to share it. This is why I try to figure out that maybe I use some terms which are not proper from the bonding psychotherapy. A bit stolen from others.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Because when you talk earlier about I lost the word. It's like that you look like with like a helicopter view within yourself, like that, you know. But I noticed that we in the body we also use a lot of other things, like the care that comes from the salt. And what I also notice is all the things in this, and to make also that current, that loving current inside of you, without any judgment. To make that awake, in my opinion, it's very important that you can achieve that only by really doing it instead of talking.
Sure.
That's my, so it's also, it is very important to write it down, but I think also very important to really do these things, to really...
The writing down is one part of the work.
Yeah.
Sometimes I cannot bring people into the group. I don't think everyone can do a bonding group in any time. So I start with individual sessions, and maybe we start to work with the inner parts, and we write down the sentences, and then maybe they come to the group and they work on the group with the mattress or in the circle. But maybe someone never come to the group because they are too disturbed. They cannot stay with so much intensity into the group. Maybe their own feelings, but the other people's feelings. They're too much. So maybe next year they will come to the group and work on that way.
Yeah, or maybe something else is first needed, more softer,
Yes.
or more tenderness.
Oh, sure.
Because like, I suddenly had to think of my education in the body and movement therapy, and this to awake this ever-loving parent inside of you, it's also very interesting. You can develop that also with the technique of authentic movement, because it's about witnessing. And then you can wake up that part of you.
Sure.
It's very interesting.
I try to use some theory, because we work mainly with the right side of the brain. So this is unconscious, non-verbal, and the movement is unconscious, non-verbal, but it's real. So all the movements are very important, and we have to deal with them. I think we have an experience of very sensitivity about the movements, even micro, small movements of the face, of the eyes, of the mouth. And if we become aware of that and we use them, are very powerful in the non-verbal communication.
Yeah, and that's because that I found out because we had last weekend the bonding Internacional as a participant. What I also noticed when you really go into it, and of course you go in a non-verbal thing. I did go into a non-verbal thing, but going into that, then from this part comes up the works come up. Then.
Yes.
And these are
And
very
this is
important
a
works.
very evolutive manner of going into the emotions. Sometimes when I scream, I speak by myself, for myself because I know that, I went into a very ancient part of myself, and I could scream only without words, just okay. But sometimes you can translate them in words, and this is very important because you really process them with all the parts of the brain. with emotional parts and with cognitive parts. This is full integration.
Yeah, but exactly, the experience I have is these words are not coming from this,
No.
from thinking of, oh,
But-
what I'm, but they really come from
Anyway, they come from
down,
within.
where they, now, but,
They start
Yeah,
down.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
it's not that you start.
This is because we have
Very
the
interesting,
three sides brain.
yeah.
You know what I could about. Can I show you a picture of that? No, I can't because I don't think here. This is not
We talked about the therapeutic alliance with the practice that seem important. So it's always good that you have somebody in the group that you know already in the therapist. But it's not always possible, and also I think there's a difference in a small group where the therapy is very important, and a large group, let's say 30 people, then the group itself becomes, let's say, the good mother or something like that, that you see that you need the trust in the group, building the trust in the group. And that can be, for newcomers, not easy, unless you have more newcomers at the same time. It's like if there's one child coming in the family, the child feels lost and nobody likes it, but if there are more, you feel already somebody in the same position. And I found out that if it happens that you have new people coming into the group, years later they remember exactly who was the other person coming with you in the same group. It gives you some feeling not being alone.
Another interesting problem we could share is how to manage with groups, because there are different ways we manage group. I was in Gigetto group, which is open group, so people come from outside and it's not the ongoing group. Either I was in the Carlo Kreiner group, which is very closed, no outsiders, always the same people. And there are good parts and bad parts in both groups. So now it happens that my colleagues send to me people to do only groups. They have the individual sessions with them, and they come into group to do a movement inside because they know that it's strong. But then they do the rest of the part. So I don't know the people. I just do one interview and I put the person in the group because he is a therapist on his back. So I think the group should be open in some ways, not always closed, because otherwise the reaction between the people into the group, they become too strong. The dependence from the group is too strong, and the new people break this language. They create a language, their own language, which is not proper for outside. So maybe having open group, but this opening must be protected in some way to control it, how it's open. Thank you.
Can you say some words about the work with technological addictions? If I understand, technological addiction means
Yes.
internet
Yes.
devices,
Yes.
gaming, and how you introduce bonding therapy within
No,
that setting?
actually there are two works. I'm a consultant with this company which works on technological addiction. I go into the school, I work with relatives, and we work on information of these people. Actually, I'm proposing to come to the group, but they are not the two activities connected.
So I could imagine it's kind of a shock, could be a shock therapy, because by nature you have a very disassociated
Right.
world and unemotional. You're kind
It
of
would
cut
be the
off,
starting.
and bonding would be the antithesis.
Right. The difficult with, let's say, hikikomori, not this problem. The retired people who stay in into the home for days, months, maybe years, and you cannot bring them into a group. They will kill themselves. They cannot stay into a group because they are so retired, so afraid of relations. And the internet has become the medium by which they relate with people, and they create their own identity. It's not only that they use internet, but they are creating their identity through internet, through the social networks, through the images, through the likes and everything. So you cannot detach them from the internet, otherwise you give them a shock like a drug addict from heroin, you take everything out and they go into a crisis. You cannot work like that. Then imagine to put him into a group, it's impossible. You have to work a lot on individual sessions before to let the person to detach from the use of internet. But actually, in my work, there are two experiences. My work as a psychologist and bonding psychotherapy, and the work with internet addictions at the moment.
¿Te puedes explicar un poco la conexión que hagan el bonding, ¿sí? El cuerpo, el artesamento? ¿Cuál es la importancia y la conexión que ha compuesto?
Come si collega il corpo?
Sí, ¿cómo se colega? ¿Por qué puedes explicar un poco?
Maybe you can explain better. Ramon asked me if I can explain the link between body and attitudes. And I think we can start from what I said at the beginning. The kid is body and feelings. So the attitudes start from there. If I learn to be afraid of relation, then my body feels the fear of relation. And when I go into an attitude, I just detach myself, I push people away. Maybe I don't move my body, but I freeze, I get cold, I get detached inside. So the emotions and the body speak together, they talk the same language. So my attitude, what we say attitude, is just the translation of what the body says. If I'm a baby and I grow for 3 years in a relationship with cruelty, anger, violence, then my body reacts and becomes in a certain way. Maybe I put my anger in my shoulders, in my mouth, in my hands, I feel violence. Maybe you did this experience. When you feel anger, finally the hands move by themselves and the shoulders get higher and stronger. And the breath, how do you breathe when you move emotions? Okay, how much tension there is in the body when I have to keep emotions and push my plesso solare? You have to Italy, please. So I speak properly. Anyway, understood me. Okay. So later on, we translate these experiences in words. We can do words to these experiences, and then the attitude. So I give a name, but in the kid there is no name. There is breath, heart, muscles that are strict, and this is the attitude.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
But
No,
the memory is there,
The memory is in the right brain, in the implicit.
even if
Yes.
you can't speak.
Yes. Sometimes I do some exercises with people to prepare them to go in the group. I do it in the individual session. So I tell them, stand up, okay, stop speaking, come with me and push your hand against my hand. Okay, just back me, okay? Hit with your hands in my hands and say one word. I hate you, maybe. Or where were you when I needed you? Where were you? Just say that. I need you. Where were you? Okay? And then the emotion come up. He doesn't even know he has this emotion, but I feel he has the emotions. When he speaks to me, the way he looks to me, the way he doesn't react to some words. No? Once I was in an interview with a woman, and she was talking about the death of her father many years ago. And so I just said her, say no. no, just the word no. She started to say no, 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 and then she started to cry. 2 minutes. She was herself. She didn't understand what happened, but we just passed through the cognitive part and we went into the right brain. One word. Many thanks.
Just coming back to the Ramon question, say it first in English. One can ask oneself, why is it that people have so destructive attitudes, governing their lives to really an abyss of destroying destiny? And I think many therapists try to, fight against this destructive attitude, and it doesn't work. And the resistance is so strong, and it's my view is to understand why the resistance not only is so strong, but has to be so strong. And this is, I think, because destructive attitudes called bad attitudes, which I dislike as a wording. There's no bad attitude as such, as destructive, were originally in very early times very intelligent, creative survival strategies. And this is why I don't never attack any old attitude, never ever, because in the moment I attack it, the resistance will build up, because the inner self says he wants to bring me away from the survival theory I have, and it resists. But what we so we have the heuristic way of wording is not bad. We say we replace an attitude, an old attitude with a new. This is heuristically, it's very good, but it's not the truth. We don't replace it. We set a new attitude aside of it, and when the new attitude gets huge, like an oak tree, there is no point in whether there's a little flower also on the side. And this is a little bit, I like your metaphor with the Grand Canyon very much. But when we have another gorge being established, then it's not so important anymore.
You made me remind of a person I was working with. He's an anxious person and he has panic attacks. Okay?
Yes.
So he really hated these panic attacks and he was angry with himself. He wanted to give them up as soon as possible. Okay. So I made him work with 2 chairs, the part which induces the panic attack, which is a very severe internal therapy. Okay, and says this, and that, and then he goes into panic. So I made them speak, and the child would say, "Go away! I don't want you anymore. Leave me alone." And then finally, in this game of chairs, he came back in the parrot side and asked him to say what was the reason, which is the intelligence of this attack. Why are you saying that these words, these bad words to the child? And he explained to the child. So he accepted not to remove them away because he understood. So, but this was the last work of maybe 1.5 years. Before he was hating himself for being so severe, and that was understandable. I can understand that he hates himself for that. But finally, he had to cooperate with the necessity of the parent. What was the meaning of that? When he understood that by himself, then he was released. Sometimes it goes into the mood anyway. It takes time. I also say that the work is like the sea, because I live on the seaside. So sometimes you have waves, and sometimes you see the shore. Sometimes you see the waves, etc. and that's life, up and down. If you can stand that, you can live. No? At the end, the seaside is nice, but you don't always see the sea, and don't always see the sun. Sometimes the sun, sometimes the sea. Stefan?
No, it's very interesting what you're saying. I was thinking, because the word came to my mind, this is the word muscle memory. And I can't even say that I know exactly what it is, but it's something I've heard more times. And I was just having the thought, if when something happens in our head, it results in some kind of poster, some kind of things. And we know, for instance, from Ramon and the dances and things, that the whole thing about the body, just moving the body, it has a good feeling effect on us in some kind of way. Then to the question, is there any knowledge about if for instance we have some kind of trauma or something that results in us walking like this, or keeping our arm like this, or having tics or whatever, that if we suppress these actively in a period, that it actually works back to the brain. You could say the question is, can we actually cure our brain with our body? By
I don't know if it would work so automatically. If you suppress a movement, then you have a reaction in the brain. Maybe you have the opposite reaction. You feel the whole body constrict.
Yeah, you could say you would need to find the posture which would be the natural one. But
yes,
you could say if you didn't have this emotional
let's say in a different way. I worked with drug addicts for many years. And so when people came to me to be cured, mainly they didn't want to be cured usually. So they come to me and say, well, I want to stop to drug myself. And they say, okay, next time you come with me without drugs. Don't drug yourself. You want to be cured? Well, start not to use drugs, which is impossible. Okay, but I need to speak with you when you're not under the effect of drugs.
But this could also be cigarettes, for instance, I suppose, not smoking before you come, or not drinking, or whatever.
Okay.
I'm just thinking.
With the body,
Yeah.
if you say, just change this movement, just change this behavior, start with changing the behavior. If you want to change inside, you can start changing the behavior, because the three-side person is behavior, attitude, and feelings. You can see the person starting the changing, whatever, from attitudes, from behavior, or from feelings. So if you can manage to change your behavior, it's a very good, but it may be even that it increases the tension for a time. If I ask the person to use drug, he wouldn't come to me very polite and
I understand that.
okay, he become crazy, agitated.
But I'm also asking for another reason, because I have been making an observation on myself recently. And that is, the thing you say that we come to bonding, or we go to do something to feel better, and we feel better, and the day after we don't feel as good, and we get hard on ourselves. This is just so much myself, or I've been through for so many years. You could say there's some kind of perfectionist that says, if you could do it yesterday, why can't you do it today, as it is? And I have been trying, I would say probably the last month or something, instead of beating myself up, because I know sometimes I get still in situations that I don't like, but I look at myself and I don't like what I see, as simple as this. And for so many years I have been beating myself up, that I was thinking, what can you actually do to, instead of being hard on yourself, because I know it's not really about me, it is something I had from my father probably, or somebody else, or whatever. Instead using a sentence which is, I can be a little bit better at. So for instance, when I'm not doing well, then I can, instead of, I know what I do, I turn on myself, then I use a sentence, I could be a little bit better at not getting angry now. And this actually had a good effect. It is like, in the sentence there's also the acceptance that this is not something I'm going to fix in 1 week or 1 week. This is the process as it is. And just by saying this and accepting this, I already feel better. And by feeling better, it's like already, oh, okay, it's not that bad. And this is already a big thing, because I was feeling so bad for feeling bad. I don't know if this makes sense, but...
You have to reach a point, you allow yourself to feel good. very strange. Huh? The hardest thing for drug addicts is to feel pleasure, because that's something pleasure. I'm a terrible person. You have to change it step by step. If they are having a birthday, they get a present. Terrible. Because you have stolen everything and whatever in their life. So to overcome the feeling that you are not have the right to get something, it's very old.
Sometimes when we work with the child, the inner child, maybe we start to believe that he has always the right position. He is always right. That is not true. So if you want to be well all the time and in 5 minutes, it's a childish position. It's everything or nothing. Now I want to feel bad forever. It's impossible. I cannot accept this position. So I have to bring you from this position to another position. This is your wish as a kid. I always wanted to feel bad all the time, good for all the time. I want to have the chocolate now and I want to stay well. That's impossible. This is a childish position. So if you go there, it's okay, you feel that, but then to feel good, you have to work a lot and you probably pass through many ups and downs, and that's okay. So if you understand that, you feel secure, you feel more well with yourself.
I think that's very good. And I think also that the way you say that when you go to another position, because maybe the problem is that it is this position you really hate. Because you know this, it's 30 years you've been having the same position. So any position would be better, basically.
And this is what I mean when I can say to myself and also to science, if you are into a bad position, maybe you have to do nothing. Maybe you just do nothing for half a day. Okay, don't react, because it's best not to react rather than react badly again. Okay, you feel bad and you start reacting badly, and then the process starts again.
This attitude helped you. If you feel you have the right and you don't get anything anyway, you probably think, well, I better stop with this idea, but it is not there. If you don't get what you need, you better stick to I do not need anything. If you are not getting any love, it's better to choose them instead of why is it. Of course I don't get it because I'm not a kid. I do things bad. So it's a way of surviving this even before you can speak. Like in a family with violence, it's better not exist too much. Then you can survive better than you are always reacting. Very often.
I have an experience about the NAP attitudes. Mi dai una mano? Domenica scorsa a Pentecoste ho incontrato gli amici scout di 40 anni fa.
Last Sunday during the Pentecost feast, he met the scout members of many years ago.
E nella liturgia, al momento della pace, ho chiesto che si abbracciassero molto fortemente.
During the mass, during the liturgy, there is a peace that is requesting to give a sign of peace to everybody. So he asked to hug the people, each other.
Siccome sono vecchi, ho chiesto loro che si prendano come impegno di abbracciare i nipoti e i pronipoti molto intensamente.
So since they are old people, I mean grown-up people, he asked them to hug the niece and the young niece instead of themselves, but in a correct way.
Perché una delle
Because
impressioni più brutte,
one of the bad feedback,
quando ci sono i bambini piccoli,
when they are the young kids,
per i problemi della mamma o del papà,
for the problem of mother and
quando prendono
father,
l'abbraccio del bambino,
when they hug a child,
non lo stringono, non gli danno l'attaccamento sicuro,
they are not giving them the right belonging, you know.
Quindi il bimbo
So the child feel themselves skidding away.
Quindi dissi,
sleeping away.
voi dovete stringere i vostri
You need
bambini,
to
i vostri
hug
nipoti,
strongly
quasi a
your
stritolarli.
knees with a very, very big strength in order to transmit strength and security to them.
Bene, 5 persone degli scout,
Five.
3 donne e 2
5
uomini,
people, 3 females and 2 men out of this group.
mi dissero,
Yeah.
io ho
Told-
sempre avuto l'impressione
Told
da
him.
mia mamma di non essere abbracciato.
They told him that they had the impression that they never been hugged properly by the mother.
E ho sempre sentito non valgo, sono rifiutata,
And the impression that they had is, I don't have value for you, I've been rejected by you,
non posso sentire di essere compresa, non
I
riesco mai
cannot
a
feel
spiegarmi bene.
myself to be belonging, to be understood.
Allora ho dato per penitenza
So as a work, as a homework,
di prendere tutti i loro nipoti,
as a homework to take all the niece,
di prendere il piacere di
to
stringerli
get the pleasure to hug them.
come penitenza.
As a penitence is when you have a sin in a Catholic, you got
Non si sono
to
mai
have
presi il
something to
piacere
remedy
del
to this.
stronzo.
So in terms of a remedy, say you need to hug all your children, all your needs properly.
As we have a few minutes, if you want, I can show you this video. I don't know if you know it. The still face experiment. The attunement between mother and child with the face, only with the face. You know this? If you saw it?
Sure.
Okay. This is very nice.
You can see it in
This is the baby talk. The way mother talks. They're working to coordinate their emotions, he says. Now they ask the mother not to respond to the baby. She uses all her abilities to try to get back the mother. The face of the mother is changing. You saw the eyebrows. She's trying to resist. She doesn't understand why the mother doesn't answer. She's looking around. This is a 2 minutes experiment, not 2 hours. 2 minutes. The mother has gone back, you see? Okay. About the attunement. Okay.
Very important, the memory and the body and the children. Yeah, and this is the bonding therapy. This is the app and the memory and the body. This
You
is
can ask
very,
this,
very nice.
this girl when happened that the mother didn't respond to her. If you ask a person that had this experience, when did your mother does? I never, when I speak with people, with relatives of tachycardic addicts, I always been there. I always done everything for my kids. But did you respond to the emotions? Last week I was with a drug addict of cocaine with his mother. After maybe 3 or 4 years, finally I was able to put them in the same room to speak. And the mother always said, I was there, I did everything for my kid. And then asked them, but when your husband hit you, because he was very violent, what was in your mind? Your kid or the violence? When you were coming home and your husband was there, what did you feel? I'm glad to be home or I'm afraid to be home? What was your feeling really? And she started to cry. It was the first time she could admit to herself in front of the son, who is 30 now, that she wasn't attuned to the needs of the kid. She didn't realize it, she didn't know, and she always justified herself, always, all the time. I was very bad with her. She hated me in that moment. Okay.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you.